continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him in his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast and creeping thing and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generation, and Noah walked with God. Noah begat three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And the earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make thee an ark of gopher wood, and room shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch. And this is the fashion which thou shalt make it of. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, and the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. A window shalt thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above, and the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof, with lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it. And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth, to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life, and from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. But with thee will I establish my covenant, and thou shalt come into the ark, thou and thy sons and thy wife and thy sons' wives with thee. And we'll stop there for now. Let's go ahead and have a word of prayer. This is the second message in the series this year that I've simply just titled God. In every page of the Bible, every aspect of our lives, we normally focus on men, as I said last week, and I want us to focus instead on God. This week's passage is a prime example of that. I mentioned it last week in kind of the introduction of the series, that we read this passage and it has been named by most, I guess you'd call them Bible scholars, most people call it Noah's Ark. Growing up in church, as a kid, you have in Sunday school, I can still picture the flannel graph. In fact, I forgot to. Is it still not on, Brother Jance? I have turned it both directions. How about now? All right, we have no lapel. So I must have forgot to put batteries in there, or it was left on from Sunday. Anyways, I'll talk loud or something. I meant to put it on the computer and forgot to do that today, but of a flannel graph, and when we, in Sunday school, when you would do that, you'd always have Noah's Ark, and they'd have the little ark, and they'd, put it up there, and then the little people would go up, and here's Noah and his family, and then come all the animals 2 by 2, and sometimes the teacher would start telling the story about the flood, and they'd take all those down and put up some angry-looking waves and clouds up on the flannel graph, and have this picture. And I'm not saying anything negative about that at all. It needs to be taught. I think we need to see what Noah did. This was a man that God chose to, in Hebrews 11, to talk about his faith. That he trusted God when I'm confident what God told him would have made no sense at all. The faith that he showed to just simply obey God, whether he understood it or not, is in my mind nothing short of amazing. So kids are in here tonight. Don't tell your teachers the next time they teach on Noah's Ark that they're not supposed to be. That's not what I'm saying at all. It needs to be looked at. I myself have preached quite a few messages about Noah. What I'm saying, though, is rather than only focusing on Noah, on the man in this situation, let's notice God. Let's notice God in this. So tonight I want to look at this and this very same passage and point out God in this passage. I'm titling the message "God in the Flood," or it could also be titled "God in the Catastrophic." God in the catastrophic, because here's an interesting thing about us. We don't like to think of God in bad situations. We don't like to think of God when things aren't going our way. No one wants to think of God as judging sin, because if they have to think of God as judging sin, then that might mean he's going to judge my sin. I'm really convinced that's why so many pastors and churches don't preach against sin. They don't preach about the judgment of God, because if they do, they're going to have to face the fact that they're sinning and God's going to judge that as well. So instead, quote, Christians want to focus only on God in a positive light, only focus on the blessings of God and the miracles that he does, and not focus on things like the judgment of God. And as I was writing this, I kept thinking, I wonder what they do with passages about the great white throne judgment. What do you do with that? You just toss it out completely? I guess that's what you'd have to do. People don't want to think of God as being part of those catastrophic events in their lives. It's why so often when something terrible happens to someone, you hear them cry out, "Where is God? Why wasn't God here during this?" Think about this for a moment, that perhaps he's right there. We don't like God in the catastrophes of life, and let's be honest, you don't get a whole lot more catastrophic than what Noah faced here. You don't have a much bigger situation than God sending a flood that destroys everything. I don't know exactly how many people were on the earth at the time of the flood. I did some reading to try and find some estimates. Being that the Bible doesn't tell us exactly, all that Bible scholars can do is estimate how many people there were. So they use some sort of calculation to figure it out. And I found this funny because I looked at probably 10 different people's estimation. They all used roughly the same calculations, and they all came up with hugely varying answers. So I got everywhere from as low as 750,000 people on the earth to as high as 10 billion people on the earth, which is a huge difference. But either way you go with it, only God and maybe Noah knew exactly, but regardless, it comes down to all of those except for 8 died. Even if you were to take the smallest number, which I don't believe it was anywhere near that small, but even if you were to take the smallest number, it doesn't get much more catastrophic than 750,000 people dying all at one time. It doesn't get much worse than that. There has never been a natural disaster or even a man-made disaster that even comes close to those kind of numbers. Also, you have to factor in things like all of the animals that were on the earth. We know that Noah had animals on the ark, but only to replenish the earth. The vast majority died. I can't help but think, and maybe this is just me, but when the waters receded, the smell. If you've ever seen a rotting animal in the woods, it doesn't smell good. The Bible talks about when the frogs were in Egypt and afterwards the smell from it. Imagine that multiplied by thousands, by millions. This was a major, a catastrophic event. And then add to the death toll of people and the animals, the effect on the landscape. All these years later, we still see the effects of the flood. Places like the Grand Canyon that people travel to vacation at so that they can see the size and the grandeur of was created by this event. Valleys carved out and the landscape forever changed. This was a catastrophic event and was all of God. This evening I have four areas of the flood that I want us to look at and see God in the catastrophic. The first area is God in the judgment. We just read verses 5 through 7. I'm going to look at them again real quick. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him in his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and creeping things, and fowl of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. A couple of things that happen here. First is God saw their wickedness. It comes to a similar place as last week, that he still cared and was watching. If you remember last week, I mentioned how some think God kind of set the world spinning and walked away. This shows that he didn't. Because when Noah was here, he was still watching. He still saw their wickedness, still saw what they were doing. He cared and was watching, even though the people weren't living how they should. Even though people weren't doing what they ought to be, he still cared. He was still watching. Even though they were a mess spiritually, he cared and was paying attention to them, which is really, to me at least, a very comforting thing, because we often can get ourselves in a place where we are a spiritual mess. And when we do, God doesn't toss me aside. He doesn't decide He doesn't want to deal with it anymore. He doesn't ignore me. He still cares and still watches over me. It tells us that God saw, and then that God repented. It actually says it twice in those two verses. Now, I have to be honest, I had to do some researching to figure this out, because I hear the word repent and I think of being sorry. And in fact, I read one guy's message this week, which is what made me really kind of start looking into this more, because I read one guy's message who said that God was sorry that He had made man. Well, that can't possibly be, because God knew this was going to happen before He created man. So got me kind of looking more. And I looked up Matthew Henry's commentary. I thought said it best. Here's what he says: that God grieved like a father with a rebellious son. It wasn't that He was sorry He made man. He was grieved at the decisions man had made. In other words, because He cared, it hurt Him to see man so wicked. He wants what's best for us. He wants to have a relationship with us, and He wants us to live for Him. And because He cares, when He sees that we aren't, it grieves Him. It saddens Him. It's like a parent is saddened when their kid has been raised in a Christian home, has been raised to do right, and raised to make godly decisions. Then they grow up and decide not to. They grow up and get away from God. The parents are grieved. It's more than just an attitude of, well, that's a bummer. It's not what I wanted. It's more, but it's not, the parents saying, boy, I wish I wouldn't have had this kid because they've turned from God. But they're hurt. They're hurt. They're grieving. That's what's happening here. God sees their sin and is grieved, and then He judged. You look at verse 7. I'm not going to read it again. We just did. But He lays out, I will destroy man. Because of the wickedness that man was involved in, man had to be punished. It's not that God was mad and reacted out of anger because of the choices that they made. It's not that He was upset and decided to forget and decided, forget it, I'm just going to wipe them all off the planet and start it again. It's that wickedness has to be dealt with. Again, it brings back to that example of a parent. If a parent cares about their kid, they punish them when they do wrong. It's not because they're angry at the kid. It's not because they're upset. It's because they care. And since they care about their kid, they punish them to help teach them what's right and wrong. That's why we have a country that's full of people who throw a temper tantrum because they didn't get the president they wanted, or anything else for that matter. They're protesting everything right now, it seems, because they were never taught that throwing a temper tantrum is wrong. They were never taught that that's not how you deal with your problems. But God cared. He looked down and saw what was going on and cared enough that He was hurt by it and stepped in to do something about it. Something had to be done. So God judged. The next thing we see God in is God in, and I'm just going to put it this way, God in the power. You look at this passage and God's power is written all over it. We'll start before the flood. God's power is seen in the obedience of Noah. We just read it, verse 13 and 14. He lays out to Noah what he wants him to do, that he's going to come and judge, and he wants Noah to build an ark. Verse 15 and 16 gives him the dimensions of it and is explaining the flood a little bit. And then you get to verse 22, thus did Noah. According to all that God commanded him, so did he. And I know I didn't read all the verses in between there, but nowhere in there does Noah question God's ability to do what He said. I mean, what God is saying He's going to do is major. This is a big thing and something that would have been completely unheard of. This entire idea of a flood would have been completely unheard of, let alone a flood that's going to wipe out everything. This is a big deal, but Noah recognized how much power God had, and Noah knew if God said He was going to do it, then He was going to do it. God's power is seen in Noah's obedience. God's power is seen in the collecting of the animals. If you look at chapter 7, verse 7 through 9, and Noah went in and his sons and his wives and his sons' wives with him into the ark because the waters of the flood of clean beasts and of beasts that are not clean, and of fowls, and of everything that creepeth upon the earth, there went in 2 and 2 unto Noah into the ark, the male and the female, as God had commanded Noah. Now notice, the animals weren't gathered because Noah and his sons were great hunters. It's not like they set up traps all over the world and began trapping animals. As Noah built the ark, his boys spread out and started trapping and gathering animals and putting them in pens. Noah and his boys weren't, playing cattle drive out, roping ostriches to bring them into the ark. You've heard the phrase, it's like wrangling cats, but had that been the case, Noah and his sons would have literally been wrangling cats. But it wasn't. The animals came because God told them to. It's once again, God's power was on display. God's power is on display and can be seen in the storm. Look at chapter 7, verse 11. It says, in the 6th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up. The windows of heaven were opened, and the rain was upon all the earth 40 days and 40 nights. In the selfsame day entered Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them into the ark. They and every beast after his kind, and all cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and every fowl after his kind, every bird of every sort. And they went in unto Noah into the ark, 2 and 2 of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. And they went in, and they that went in, male and female, of all flesh, as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him up. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the water increased, and bare up the ark, and it was lifted up above the earth. And the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark went upon the face of the waters, and the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. Now, think for a moment about this flood. We live in the Northwest. Anyone who's been here much time at all has seen a flood, but this wasn't just a flood. The Bible describes it in kind of 2 major ways. The first is the fountains of the deep broke. We're talking water spewing out of the ground. I picture it like a geyser, and I don't know if it was exactly that, but that's how my mind pictures, like a geyser. I don't remember how old I was, but one year our family went to Yellowstone, and there were a lot of really cool things about that vacation. We got to see I think it was a grizzly bear, a brown bear, some sort of bear, and that was the one thing I wanted on our vacation. I had said the entire time that it was going to be disappointing if I didn't get to see a bear, and we got to see a bear, and it was pretty close even, so that was cool. We got to see moose, and we got to see tons of bison, and which also was cool because they're so close and kind of just stand in the way of everything. You have to go around them. We got to see and smell the hot springs that smelled really terrible. But one thing that we got to see was Old Faithful, where water shoots up from the ground anywhere. I looked up the numbers to be sure on this. Anywhere from 90 to 184 feet in the air. It's a really impressive thing to see. And I know the Bible doesn't specifically tell us geysers, but that's what I picture, is water shooting up from all the underground aquifers, water gushing up from the ground. And then add to that, the windows of heaven opened. If water flying up out of the ground isn't enough, the windows of heaven open, which doesn't mean it sprinkled a little bit. Now that doesn't mean your hair's going to get wet walking from your car to your house. We're talking downpours, probably more than we've ever seen. So much rain, in fact, that not only does the Bible tell us it lifted the ark, which would have been no easy task when you start to figure out the dimensions of this thing. It lifted the ark, but enough that it covered the high places and continued to rise until it covered all the mountains. Doing all that, and not just in one place. Everywhere. I mean, that would be impressive enough if it was Washington State underwater. We're not talking just one place. We're talking everywhere. Doing all that is power that only God possesses. Looking at the sheer size and the power of the storm puts God's power on display. And when we look at this passage, God's power, can be seen. It can be seen in the judgment. It can be seen in, or God can be seen in the judgment. God can be seen in the power that we see in this. The third thing, God can be seen in the grace. If you look back at chapter 6, verse 8, it's going on about the wickedness of man, and all of a sudden it's like it changes direction, and it says, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. It's going on about the wickedness of the earth and how God is going to destroy everything there. And then he stops, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Think about this just for a moment with me. Wouldn't it have been easier for God just to start with a clean slate? I mean, really, wouldn't it have been easier rather than to have to give Noah the time to build an ark and make the animals all come and to flood the earth and then start with replenishing with Noah and his family? Wouldn't it have been easier just to destroy everything and start again? I mean, it's not like it was hard for God to create the earth and everything on it in the first place. It took longer for the flood than it took for God to create everything the first time. Seems to me as though it would have been easier for God to simply speak the words and say, you know what, it's gone. Destroy everything, we're going to make a new one. And that would have worked except for one thing, which we looked at earlier. He cared. He loved the people that he had created. And though everyone else was living wickedly, Noah wasn't. Verse 9 lays that out very simply. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. While everyone else was living wickedly, Noah wasn't. So God showed grace. Noah's survival of the flood had nothing to do with Noah's ability. Noah and his family didn't survive the flood because he was a great shipwright and made, a boat big enough to weather God's storm. The animals that were brought through the flood weren't brought through because Noah and his sons did anything special. Those who survived the flood because of one simple fact, and that was God's grace. God cared, so God made a way. Which leads us to the last point tonight. We can see God in the judgment. We can see God in the power. We can see God in grace. And then lastly tonight, we can see God in the result. If you turn over to chapter 8, verses 1 through 4 quickly, it says, And God remembered Noah, and every living thing, and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged, the fountains also of the deep, and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained, and the waters returned from off the earth continually. And after the end of 150 days, the waters were abated, and the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. I love how it words this, that God remembered Noah. This is a time where Noah and his family would have felt very alone. Think about it. You are very literally the only people on the face of the earth. You're trapped in a wooden box with nothing but water around you. It would have been very natural in this to feel like we are all alone. There is no one there. There is no one that cares. But God hadn't forgotten Noah. It's saying God remembered Noah doesn't mean, after all this time, all of a sudden God's like, oh yeah, Noah's still in that box. No, he hadn't forgotten Noah. God remembered Noah. He still saw, he still loved him, and he was still taking care of him. When the time was right, God stopped the rain, made the waters to recede. God got them through. And then, as if that wasn't enough, they get off the ark, and in chapter 9, we won't turn over there right now, God blesses them. You can very clearly see God in the flood, God in the midst of the catastrophic. Now, for conclusion tonight, I want to kind of bring this to us a little bit, because it's very easy when we look at passages like this to say, yep, that's true, I can see God in Noah's story. We can see that and very easily kind of separate ourselves from it. But I want to bring this to us. We can look at the flood and see how God was working. We can easily see how this was God judging, and we can easily see God's power throughout the entire process, and we can see His grace. But then we can often look at that and then say, but what does this mean for me. Here it is, really, really simply. Just like Noah, when we're faced with, or just like Noah, when he faced this, what would have been a terrible event, God was there and God was going through it all. And when you are going through your worst, when going through those times that we feel like we're all alone, we aren't.
Amen.
God's there.
Amen.
We see in Genesis 8 verse 1, God remembered Noah. It can be said of each one of us. When we're going through that catastrophic time in our life where we think it's just me, I'm all alone, God remembers you. In the catastrophic moments of your life, because we all go through them, what we think are catastrophic times, rather than focusing on yourself, rather than focusing even on the problem, let's focus on God. Look for God in those catastrophic moments. Let's pray. Lord, I pray that you'll help us to see the fact that you remember us. We get in those hard times in life and the difficult things, and it's so easy for us to feel like God's forgotten me. God's let me down. God's abandoned me. And simply put, that's not the case. No matter what we're going through, you remember us. You're still there. Pray, Lord, that you help us to learn to take our eyes off of us, our eyes off of the problem, and turn our eyes and our focus on you. Pray this in your name. Amen. Let's go ahead and stand with heads bowed and eyes closed this evening. As usual, the altar call is simple with this message. Where's our focus? We all go through times in life where we feel like I'm alone. We feel like I'm facing this problem by myself, but God's there. We aren't alone. We may feel like we're separated from everyone else, but God still cares. He's going to see us through it, and He hasn't forgotten you.